Hello everyone, it's Peter. Welcome you back. We will continue with the testing. So last time we talked about the mock test with Mockito. Yeah. So this is a very powerful tool, and if you want to go too deep, so there are lots of different scenarios. For example, how do you mock a static method? Because we may have static method. In our previous case, they are all non-static method based on object. You can mock an object, but for static method, how do you mock? And for different parameter, if the parameter is null, how do you mock? You can use mockito.anyString, but what if it's a null input? How do you mock? If you use any string, it won't work. So we have actually this is a big topic. So based on your scenarios, and there could be a lot of work to do. So usually it's like several months job for the different mock test cases for a big project, only for mock test. Now, mock test is also a unit test, right? So it only tests one class, but mock the dependency of this class, and it's just an improvement of the unit test. But next, we will talk about MockMvc. MockMvc is end-to-end test. That is, as a REST service, REST API, starting from the REST endpoint and go to the service tier, go to the DAO tier, and for the whole test. But we have two parts of it. One is the mocked integration test, and the other is called the integration test. It's a real integration test. Real integration test is we'll get the real data from the DAO. DAO will connect to the real database. And the mocked integration test, then the DAO part, the dependency part, will be mocked. So the concept, the different concept between the mock test and the integration mock test is the mock test will only mock the dependencies. The dependency may be another class. Another class may be also a concrete class which is not depending on anything else. And the mocked integration test is the dependencies is the whole project depending on something else. For example, I depend on database. The database is outside my system, or I depend on another service, web service, because, for example, I want to call another web service, not in our system. So I have to mock that part. So in the MockMvc, we can solve this this problem. And the integration test is all connecting to the real data. So the integration test might be fail because if I update data in database, then the integration test will fail because you read the real time data, right? So that's why in our system we in the build part in the POM, we write a block to intensively in the profile. We intensively to skip the integer test.java. Intensively do this one. Okay. So it means that when you do the mvn clean install, so it will do all the tests, but excluding the integration test, because we cannot guarantee that the integration test will pass because it will get the real-time data, and the real-time data might be changed. So I want to clarify the two concepts. One is the mocked integration test with MockMvc. This one can always be working. You have to guarantee this is true. So in this mocked integration test, it all it are all within the same system, and the integration test will depending on the something outside of the system. Okay. So both of them are integration tests. Now let's talk about the MockMvc. Because the code is a lot, I cannot manually run the code, input the code during the class. So I already prepared the code and I will explain the code for you. So for the code test, you don't have to add any dependencies. In the pom.xml is fine. So you don't have to add anything. Now let's start with the employee controller test. This is a MockMvc test. Okay. Now I want to explain in detail. So at the beginning is a Spring Boot test. The classes is employee app.class. This means it will get all the config file because this employee app will have the config file, employee config class. And this web environment, it will start with a random part. The reason is when we start this employee app by default, the port number is 8080. So if we already start my service, but meanwhile I want to do the integration test, so the port number might be occupied. So they will use this random port to test the service. So you don't have to focus on the 8080. So from the console, we will see what happens from the random port. Now the URL is manager. I already give the root URL is manager of our controller is managed. And then there's a MockMvc. And then this is web application context. This is to read the application YAML file. Okay? They are auto-wired. It's auto-wired to this system. And then the important thing is this one, MockBin, MockBin EMP.DAO. So you can see the annotation is a little bit different. This is MockBin. If we go to the mock test like this is called mock. Both of them are employee DAO, but this is mock and this is MockBin. What's the difference? So this annotation mock only will be working only in this test class. It will not working on the for the other classes. But because the Mockito test is also a unit test, is only test for in this unit. And in this unit, this is a dependency for this class, for the class employee service import. But for the integration test, things are changed. Because this EMP.DAO will go through the whole system. In the whole system, this employee DAO might be used for different services. But in our example, there's only one service, employee service import, to call the EMP.DAO. But in the real project, a DAO object might be called by different services. So I use MockBin. It means that it will be mocked everywhere through all the system. Okay, that's MockBin. MockBin is like a global, and the mock is like local. It's like local. Now, before each, I use the setup to build use MockMvc builder to set up this web application context or build. So this means when I start the service, when I start the test, it will automatically wrap the application or YAML in the system, so that all our auto-wild part will be working. That all our auto-wild part will be working. That stereotype will be working. Okay, that's the initial preparation for the MockMvc. Now let's test the first one. Let's go back to the controller. In this controller, we test the hello. I will skip it. I don't test the hello. I test the search by name. So let's see. Here, search by name. So first I build the full URL. So it's based on the manage and plus search plus Alice is my URL. I want to test Alice. Alice is not real-time data. Even our embedded H2 has Alice, but doesn't matter. So I just use Alice. Then I also use the Mockito part. This is the same as in the Mockito test, right? So whenever it's called find by name, it will return the build employee entity. Right? Build employee entity is copied from the Mockito service test. Okay, this entity is Alice with this number. Okay, now so next is important. So this MVC will perform. So that's the whole language in this mock MVC. This MVC will perform. So this builder.get, this is get request. This is request URL. And content type should be application the JSON. And accept also JSON. Okay. And then after that, it then .end expect. Expect what? Expect the status is okay. So I give the full name. So actually you can import the static of this one, but I want to make it clear. You don't have to go upper to find out what's the class, what does this status belong to. Okay. So it's okay means that it returns normally. And then I want to check the result. In the response, there's a JSON path, right? So if we see this, okay, this is a JSON result. In the JSON path, we have successful is a field, name is a field, salary is a field. I want to verify the three field, so I will use this way. Dollar dot is dollar represents the response dot. The successful value is true. This is name. This is salary, and finally I use verify. This is optional, as I said before. You can verify this is only executed once. Okay. Now let's run it. Oh, be careful. You have to throw the exception because this one, the perform, will throw the checked exception. So either you handle it or you simply throw outside. Okay, let's run it. Okay, let's go through the console. Let's go through the console. See, this is port initialized with port is 0. Okay, and starting this one processing. Yeah, and then okay. Now, see, Tomcat started on port 2548. This is a random port. Every time it's different. Okay, with contact path is EMP. And then started this test in this one, and then request to search. This is our log, right? This is when we have the endpoint, and we pull this one, and then we go through it, and finally shut down. It automatically shut down the service, the server. So in this test, it will launch the server and shut down server automatically. So you don't have to worry about that. So it will start server then and stop and shut down the server. Okay. Then it will work. So this is unit test. Okay. So in the MVC test, there are several components. One is you have to mock the mocked object. So use the Mockito. Still use the Mockito. The second thing is then if you run the perform. In the perform, you can have get. You can have this one can be. You can imagine that you can have a post for post request and put for put request and delete for delete request, right? With content type, usually we use JSON, right? If you have a string, like if you want to test hello, then the type will be media.text or HTML, right? Text underscore HTML. And then finally you expect the final status is okay. And then you can use JSON path to go through the field to verify those fields. Okay, then verify. So this code I think is not that difficult to understand. Now let's go to the second one, test search by salary. There are different cases because in the second case, we might throw the bad request, right? So if both of them are null, both of minimum salary and maximum salary are null, then we throw the bad request. And then the response the wrapper could contain nothing because if in this range, you cannot find any data. So I want to test different cases. Now let's go this one. So the URL first array that here is that. So this one means that I don't input the minimum salary and the max salary and make both of them are null. In this case, I perform the same get request contain this and expect the status is bad request. I use this method. This is okay. So actually in the status record, if you click dot, there are lots of things. If 2xx successful is more specific, successful is 200 or 204 or something. And if 4 something is bad request, and if 5 something is server error. So they have some specific result. But you can have like some general result like it's bad request, right? It's bad request. It's okay. You can see there are lots of methods. It's conflict. It's bad request. It's bad gateway. And then there is okay. It's okay. It's the correct one, and it's not found. Maybe you cannot find any result. So then some specific one you can make a test. But we just give a very simple introduction. So in the real project, could be different cases. Could be is of 2 something or 4 something or 5 something. So here I introduce the code of 2 something, the status code. Like 2 something, like 200 is the good one. It's normal result. And maybe there's 204 and something like 2 star. Right? Starting with 2, the status code usually is good. And 4 something is the bad request. Like basically it's 400 is bad request. Okay. And 5 something, for example, 500 is the internal server error. Like if you see, these are the basic things. 404 is 404 is very popular, right? So this link cannot be found, as you're always the 400 things. And the 400 things means that it cannot go through the backend. When you touch the backend, it's wrong. And the 500 things, like 5 something, means that you already touched the server, and the server is running, and something wrong in the server. Okay, it's about the 4 something and the 5 something. That's the basic knowledge of status code. Okay. Now let's come back. Now first case, so there's a bad request. The second case is starting from 20,000 to 50,000, and then you can use Mockito.anyInt. So we can have any object. Let's say any is any object, any string, any int, any byte, all those things. Then return. We build the employee entity. Okay, so there's only one object inside the result. So these are all fake results. It's not the real result from the database. Okay. So now you get those things, and the JSON path, everything is the same. Then JSON path successful is true. Now this is a little bit different. So we in the wrapper. Okay, let's see in this employee wrapper. There's a complicated case. So we have a list of employees. It's not a single object. So this is a list of employees. If it's another object, you can use a dot with another dot to go to the detail field. But this is a list of employees. What can we do in the MVC, MockMvc? So this is the employee bracket. Employees is a list. It's like an array. So use bracket 0. There's only one record dot name, and bracket 0 dot salary is like this. So this is a little bit different. And next, if the employee dot find by salary returns null, which returns nothing, then the successful is false. Then the message is value no record found. So if we run the two of them, the Mockito EMP dot will run twice. So Mockito times 2 find by salary. So let's run this one. Okay. You can see inside then they have 3 lines. First is found by null and null, and the other two is for 2 of them. Okay. Now that's the second case. The third case is pretty simple. It's a save employee, but this time it's a post request. So URL plus save. Okay. When you save and return out, because this save method, as we mentioned last time, so this is copied from the Mockito test. So this post is this post and the content, and then the one thing, because we have to send a payload, that's a little bit different. This is the payload. The payload I first create, I first build an employee is an object. I will convert this object as a string because this content has to be a string. So I use the JSON string method here. This is a JSON string for any object. Okay, I just return. This is final. It's optional. You can do it or not. So new object mapper dot write value as string. So use object mapper. If you want to search for object mapper, this is a very good, very important API. Object mapper. If you want to go through how to use object mapper to convert an object to a string or return a string back to an object, you can go to MKYON web page. Okay. How to convert the Java object to this one? So for this one, this is a quick reference. And here is gives the example, and I think there's another page like this one. Yeah. Convert Java object to or from. Okay, from this one. So this is this Jackson file. This one I don't have to embed in my code because in the Spring Boot it already contains this dependency. Okay, and Pojo and those things. So if you have interest to go through the object mapper, then you can go to this website to search for object mapper. So it will convert an object to a JSON format or convert from JSON string to an object. Now let's continue. Then this is save. So in the post, I use content to give the payload, and then content type and other is the same, and expect OK, and the result is only response that the JSON path is successful is true, and other is verified. Increase salary is the same. I have the same Mockito part, and the content is a build request as JSON string. and here I use put. Okay, and here I use post for save employee. Here I use put for increase salary. Okay. And delete employee is the URL. I delete Bob, and here I use delete URL. Delete URL. Other is the same. There's no payload. If I have payload, I should add content and change the payload into a string. Use object mapper. Okay. Now that's all for the MockMvc test. Now I can do a test for all of them to make sure all of them are working, not one by one. Okay. So if I go to JUnit, so I can see all the test cases are green. Okay. This is about MockMvc test. Of course, there are lots of other details. So for the specific issue, for a specific problem, you may face different issues. So it's still in my memory, I spent some time to handle some special cases in the MockMvc test. Now, this is MockMvc test is an integration test with faked data and mocked all the dependency of the system, not dependency of a class. Be very careful. So MockMvc is to mock the dependency of the whole system, not a single class. Now, next, let's talk about the integration test, the real integration test. I use integer test. Integer test use this naming convention. This will be skipped in the build. So again, the top part is the same. Three input test with classes, those things. Then I auto-while the test REST template. I run this, use this one. This one is a test REST template. We have another one just called the REST template. Just REST template. REST template is the API to call other web services. So because each, as I said before, like in the REST API, each REST API is a self-independent service. So they want to communicate with each other. So one web service might call another web service. I will give you an example in the future, but currently I just give you an introduction. And test REST template is for test purpose. Now, let's say test search by name. So again, it's the result URL is the URL. And then we have the response entity. Here, we can have the good thing for response entity. In the controller, in the say hello, I just return a string. I don't return a response entity. But now, I think from the last example, I think the response entity will be very helpful because it can identify the bad request. Otherwise, if something is wrong, then you won't get, you will get exception. But using response entity, and you can get status. You get status. Yeah. Now let's come back to integration test. So the first one, search by name. I can use REST template get for entity. The basic one is called exchange. Exchange. This is the basic one. Exchange can give the URL and the HTTP method. Method can be get, put, post, delete, right? But the simplified version is that you can get for entity. You can get for entity. And then there are two things, two parameters. One is the URL. The other is the response type. Is employee response. Okay. Then you can say status is okay, and the exchange status is get status, and then you can get the response. So this is a wrapper. This one entity is a wrapper, and then get body, and then to verify those fields. And then if you search something else, ABC, this is a real-time data. So you can see at least 72,000 is in our data, right? This is a real data. This is a real data. Now, if ABC does not exist, then I can get status code is still okay, but the successful is false. Okay. That's the let's make a test. Okay, then it's working. If we change it to 73,000, okay, that's the real database. If I change this one, and then I run this code again, it will have something wrong. See, they expected 72,000, but it was 73,000, right? So it means that the integration test will do the real-time data. And let me do the build mvn clean install. So this one will also run the test, but it will skip the integration test. So this one will be successful. You can see the build run lots of tests, but it won't run integration test. So it's built successful. I just want to make this change to prove that. Now let's go back to 72. Okay, then make the code working. This is search by name. Search by salary. Okay, I can use the full link, right, with question mark. And then here I use get for entity is the same. I get the result. And for this search salary, this is bad request. So I can use exchange equals the status code is bad request. So I don't need to check anything else. This is search by salary. And save employee. So I use post for entity. So see that this is get for entity is get request. This is post for entity. And this is the payload. So get for entity, there are two parameters, is the URL and the return type. And the post for entity is URL with the payload and then return type. Okay. Return type. Now this is the save employee. And for increase salary, this is a put request. So do we have put request? Actually, we do have put request, but let's say this. If you use REST template.put, yeah, you can say put, but you can see the put doesn't return anything. It returns void. Our code, if our code returns void, you can use put, but our controller doesn't return void. If you change this return type to void, then you can use let put. But now it's not a void. So that's why I don't use this put method. So I use the initial one is exchange. Exchange has four parameters. The first one is URL. The second one is method is put. Then is new HTTP entity. This is to wrap the payload in the new HTTP entity. If there's a payload, then finally is the return class. Then okay, and then it's successful. For delete, I also use the exchange. It has delete method, but the return type is not is void. So I use exchange. Then I use request URL, HTTP method delete. There's no payload. I just use now, right? Because delete I don't have any payload in the request, and then response. So they are for the post. For this post, put and delete. There are different cases. Okay, and then I run the integration test. They are all the real-time data. Like this JSON, we can really delete it. This increase, I increase the salary. Okay, then let's do the whole integration test. Let's save it. So I built a different branch called feature test, only for the test. So because this code I will use for the future. So when we talk about AWS, I will change the backend from the relational database H2 to AWS DynamoDB. To AWS DynamoDB. Okay, this is done. Okay, what's wrong with that? Search by salary. But it was 3. Oh, here you can see the problem is I can see the save part. The save part I create a save. Oh, okay. No, what's wrong? In my data. Okay. In my data between 50,000 to 80,000, I have what? I have two data, Alice and Bob, right? This is between 50,000 and 70,000. Okay. But after I do the save, I save an employee. This employee has, let's say this, I tested the save method, test the save employee. If this save employee is working first, okay, and build employee, right? So this build employee, so the salary is 75,000. So it means I get 3 records between 50,000 and 80,000. That's why if you run all of them, it has a wrong answer. So I want to change this one to a bigger one, out of the like 91. That's a bigger one. So then I run it. As I mentioned, the integration test might be fail. Might fail because the data might be changed during the test, or even something change the data, update data in the backend. I think this time it will work. Okay. So it will all work. Okay. Now this is the integration test. Now after that, I can use MVN clean test Sona. Let's see the code coverage. I think now we should have a pretty good code coverage. Let's run this one. It's 94.5%, right? So see this, all of them are 100%, and the controller, because I didn't test the hello, that's something not working. And the entity, there's a 2 string, and the app, I didn't touch that one, go through that one. So I think it's already 94.5%. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And the lines to cover and the essay overview. There are some code smell, some duplicate blocks replaced with lambda and method. What's this? They want to use a better one. Okay, let's go to wrapper. This is a search by salary. Okay, in which method? Service import. Let's make a change. Let's go to the service import. So this one, they use lambda style. So maybe they want to go to this style, this map. Is this one? Yeah, use this style. So then I do it again. The duplicate block, I have no way to change it. I code it inside. Then I run it again. So usually in the real project, if the code coverage from the SonarQube is 80% or higher, then that's good enough. It's already in good shape. Now our code is over 90%. That's pretty good. Okay, then let's run the service again. So the code smell is only two duplicate blocks, so it's 94.5%. So this picture is very nice. So code coverage is good from SonarQube. And then I will commit my code. Yeah. I just update it. And we'll push to the feature test branch. Now I can check out from the master branch, go to my original branch. Next, I will talk a little bit about the Docker. Okay. Now I will introduce. First I talk about this one, EMP services. So I have feature branch and master branches. Now in the future, the test is in a different branch. So master will have no test cases. Okay. The reason is that in the master branch, I may update my code to different DAO, right? For example, in DynamoDB, and then test case will fail because the backend is changed. So some code will be changed. So I want to keep the original test code as your preference. Now, let's say Docker. We can build a Docker image. So we already used let's run the 3 lines. First, we build it. So inside there's a you can see in the target. In the target, you will have the emp service.jar, right? Now, then we need a Docker file. To see the Docker file, let's go to this command. So we have a Docker file here. We can copy the Docker file. Let's create a file. So you can use refresh. So using refresh, then target has a emp service.jar, okay, and then in under test is nothing under test, right? So here I can new a file. The name is Docker file, only this name. Let's see, yeah, Docker file. Yeah, in the Docker file, the name cannot be changed. You cannot use other name. You can only use Docker file. It only recognize this file name, and then you copy. Sorry, what's that? Let's copy the code. Copy the code. You change this jar to emp services. So emp services. The emp services. So this is good. So add a target is under target, and then the expose 8080 is the port number, and the entry point is this. You can run java-jar about this jar file. That's it. Now after that, we can run this command: docker build -t with emp services. So this is the image name. The image name, emp services, it can be any name. So I just use the same name. So you build a Docker image. So if you say Docker image ls, so you will see emp services here. Right? There's image ID. I have lots of other images under my Docker. So this is one of it. And then you can run it. You can run. So in this run, it doesn't need Eclipse at all. It's just in the command line. You can start the server. You can start the server. So you can say started the input server at this second, started on port number. Yeah. So this looks like the same as the console in our Eclipse. Okay. And if you go to here, you can see this is running, right? EMP services. Previously, we only have SoundCube running. Now we have EMP services. And if you want to run this code, like request, let's run this request again. Let's use the second one. Maybe I change the name. This is Alice. Why is it's not this one. This is Jesse. Okay, sorry, that's the wrong one. I go to this one. Search by name. Let's run it. See, it's the same result. It's the same result. Yeah, so I don't want to run others. So I already keep this one. So this is about Docker. So you can see the console. Okay. Then use Ctrl+C. You can skip it, and then this one you can see also the console is showing here. I can go back. Yeah. So this one I can stop it. Then I can delete it. If I don't want to run it, delete it. So this is about the Docker. You build a Docker image and you run in Docker. Docker is actually a virtual machine. So it is independent from your system. You can be running on Windows or Linux or Apple, any system. So Docker is just a virtual machine. Now, next, I want to introduce the Jesse REST. Okay, I didn't mention here. Maybe I add something like Jesse REST. It's a legacy system. But I know some companies still use JC REST, but it's also a good one, That I already built a JC REST EMP services. Okay. So this service, all the backend is exactly the same. I just show some difference. Okay, number one is the POM. So in the POM, I need to add one more dependency, which is Spring JC. This is a dependency we need to add, starter JC. With this dependency, then the second difference is our config file. We have EMP config, this is the same, but we need to add a JC config. In the JC config, the code, I just copied, so I don't want to go to the detailed explanation, but the only thing you need to change is this find candidate component. It's like a component scan with the controller. So we'll start with this controller. So this one, you need to make the corresponding change. The others, you don't need to change, and you add this as a component in the JC config. Now, next, the third one is the controller. Okay. So in the controller part, see, they have a different annotation is at path. In Spring REST is a request mapping. Now this is at path. This is all from this API, JavaX.ws, web service, REST service, ws.rs. All the annotations is from JC, JC REST. Now let's concede. And this is hello. This is get. So in our code is get mapping with the path. Then it's get and path. Then produces, right? And then get path produces, right? And the parameter is different. In Spring REST, we use a path variable. This use a path parent, okay? And this is a query parent. And in our code is request parent, right? So we can compare the difference, annotation difference. Others is exactly the same, okay? And the get path, so the parameter is different, and the save. And a good thing for this is you just input the parameter. You don't have to write the request body. In our Spring REST, we have to add annotation called as request body, and so this doesn't need to be that. But you need to add produces consumes those things, and put increase, and then delete. That's all. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. So others is exactly the same. This is just a JC REST. JC REST. So I can run it. I can also run JC REST. Okay, and I also build the SOAP file, like search by name. Let's run it this time. So it will work, right? It will work. It's the other side, I already built it, so that's fine. So if you want, you can rebuild the whole APIs in the SOAP, UI. So this is JC REST. In JC REST, I add another test called the Pact test. This is a very complicated test. So I want to give a brief introduction of the Pact test. What is Pact test and what is useful? And the Pact test is a contract test, and it's very good for code migration to ensure accuracy. So, in the current industry, a big job, I'd rather say like maybe 30–40% of the job is to migrate an old REST system to a new REST system. For example, they want to migrate from Spring, the traditional Spring framework, to Spring Boot. As I said, it's a bootify, to make the Spring project as a unit. So they want to do this migration, or migrate the very legacy like struts or some old MVC system to REST. So there are some contracts before. So the legacy REST API has some contract. I already mentioned about what is contract in the REST API, input, output, right? So after you migrate to the new API, new REST API, so I have to guarantee the contract is the same. It's the same input will result the same output, will not change. Otherwise, maybe this REST API will be called by lots of other upper systems. If you change the contract after your migration, it will crash the whole system. So now, how to do this kind of test? We use the Pact test. So we need to retrieve the input and output the contract from the old the log system. From the log system, you can use the log to find the input output contract from the legacy system, and then input into the Pact test and to make it the match. So I give you an example. To do the Pact test, is very, very big. There are lots of sort of small things. I just give you a entry level understanding, entry level point of the Pact test. Now let's go to the test. So Pact test has two parts. One is called the consumer test, one is called the provider test. It can be integration test, it's end-to-end with the real data. It can also be like a mock test with some mocked the dependency outside of the system. So I just go through the integration test. Now, first, let me open the integration test. Okay. Integration test. Let's see. So it has a request URL and a response. This is a request, right? This is a request URL. I changed another name, like Jesse EMP search, and the response. Response is the is this response. Right. This is a JSON format. I changed the JSON format to a string, and I put a string in this response. Okay. This is response. Now I use consumer as EMP underscore consumer. You cannot use dash. I will explain why. You can only use underscore. Then with this code and with header with application JSON, then with response, then the builder.get. This is the state name. This will be used in the provider. Okay. Upon receiving, this can be anything. We just have a description. The method is get. Then with headers will define what kind of data, like it's JSON data, your input or output. Then path is request URL, and the will response with the status will be 200. Okay, 200 is the normal response, and the body is the response, and the return this one to Pact. Now, next is the test part. The test part is the Pact method is search by name. This name will be this name, right? This name will be match. Okay, and test by name is also the header with this one, and the response is request.get mock server. There's a mock server. Okay. Okay. The input is mock server. The mock server.get URL pass your request URL. This mock server URL is the local host of some pod, right? So you don't need to know. And set the headers and execute and the return response. And other not other that with this one is equal to 200. Okay, let's run this consumer test. Consumer test does not touch the real-time data. It's just generate a contract. Let's say, so we have a consumer and a provider. EMP provider and the EMP consumer, we use underscore. Let's run it. Okay, after you run it, it's successful. But what happens? Then you go to the target. Under target, you refresh it. It will generate a Pact, this file. And under this file, it will create, this one is just created. So you can see EMP underscore consumer dash EMP underscore provider. You can see you provide the consumer, you provide the provider, and they will use this naming convention to connect the consumer and the provider. But if you use the dash in the EMP consumer, then it will be confuse the system. Right? I open this one. Now this is the contract. This is provider, this is consumer, right? And the interaction, the method is get. This is the path, the URL, and the header, the type is application.json. Then response is this response. Status is 200. This is body. Body is this body, right? And the provider state is this is the name of state. This is a state. Okay. The metadata. Okay. So this is the version. Okay. So actually, this is a contract. So based on the consumer test, I create a contract. Then we come to the provider test. This one. Okay. In the provider test, you can see extended with Spring Boot test. It's really a Spring Boot test. Okay. So with the web environment and the classes, which one this is good, and then this is properties, give the version, and then give the provider, which is the same provider. The pact folder you have to specify the pact folder is under target /pacts is this one. So from this folder, it will automatically find the contract and verify the contract. Now here is the local server port, is a random port, and then set up target, test target. So this is the before each code, and then this is to verify interaction. So we can see this is the interactions, right? So then we can verify interaction, and the state is a search employee by name. See, this state is the state is where's the state? Here, search employee by name. This is state. So you have to verify this state. So let's run it. Okay, so it's green. So it means it verified the state, this test template. Okay. This is called the Pact test. The Pact test will verify some mistake, like it's supposed to return, like for integer value, the old contract will return 0, but the new contract will return null, right? Because it may change int to integer. Okay? Those kind of things are very, very tiny, but it will affect lots of things that it's hard to find out what happens. Okay? I want to clarify. So, for example, the response, the auto response may be, for example, if the name is Alice, salary is, for example, is this. This is format data, right? But maybe after you migrate it, for some reason, you change the format. Just you forget to change the format. You just use this one. Okay. Then the two contracts does not match because the format is different. The guy who calls your service might use this format, but not this number. So this will result a big mistake, big crash of the system. So from the Pact test, you just use the legacy system and retrieve the logs of the input and the output from the legacy system and inject into your Pact test, and you want to verify they are all working. So actually, I have one project to migrate from the Spring Boot, Spring system, Spring framework project to Spring Boot, which is called Bootify, and we want to migrate more than 30 different small web services, and I found a lot of Pact test errors between the old system and the new system. So we need to build the corresponding change to make it a match. So this is very, very important and helpful when we migrate systems using the Pact test. Okay. Now, as my example, the data is correct, the backend data, everything is correct, but it's just a format error between the new system and the old system. So those kind of mistake will happen a lot during the migration in the real project. Now this is about the Pact test. Now let's close all. And another thing maybe now is already deprecated is I think I give you a link. It's about Swagger. I have a new feature called Swagger. I can switch to Swagger. Oh, it's running. It's running. Then console. I think it's this one. This one I close it. Now I just switch to Swagger. Fresh. Okay. The Swagger. What is a Swagger? Here I give explanation. So the Swagger plugin that may not be available for this one. So there's a YouTube video to introduce Swagger. Swagger means that you create a Swagger console so that you don't need SOAP UI. you can verify from the browser. So in the Chrome, you can add a Swagger plugin. But now this plugin is not available anymore. Swagger UI plugin for Chrome. For Chrome. So there's a website for this one. So yeah, this is Swagger UI. Let's say if I add to Chrome, change all the add extension. Okay. It will be added. Okay, so you just check this one, and then so in here you can see this is a Swagger UI. You can open the Swagger UI. Okay, it's like this. I don't know if it's still available. Maybe it's not available. So now let's talk about this one. So for Swagger, let me explain a little bit about POM. So in the Swagger, I have a set of like dependencies in Swagger. There's 4 dependencies. The version number is here. Now the difference is after you have Swagger, in the config you have Swagger config. You have Swagger config, okay, to specify those things. So and this is API information. Those Swagger, so they just copy it and change your own information. This is Swagger. Then in the controller. So we add some add API to explain this is employee services and this is operation and it could return something with response and all those things will be here. Okay. API operations. You can explain each API, each REST API. So that is in the website, you can explain to the user what is API, what's the input, what's the output, what's the data. Okay, and it's sometimes the people like to use Swagger to test the REST API. Now let me run it. Okay, so in this Swagger, you need to input localhost 8080. This is Jesse. Swagger.json. Let me see. Maybe there's no Jesse, just swagger.json. So I'm not sure. So this Swagger may not work anymore. I will figure out. How to make Swagger work. This is Swagger plugin. So here in the plugins, there's a Swagger inspector extension. So for this one, you can run your code like HTTP localhost 8080. Use Jesse, use EMP, search Alice. You can send this one. So it's like you from the Chrome, you can send the result, right? So this is the result. This is Swagger Inspector. Then the Swagger UI. Swagger UI can give more brief expression, description of your REST service. But sometimes it's not. It's very old. I used Swagger a long time ago. But this concept I can introduce. And if you like, you can go to the video to see how Swagger is working. Okay. If I can figure it out, and in the future class, I will give you the example. Okay. Now let's go back to the to this one. So I built 2 different projects. One is use JCEMP services. This has a Swagger branch, okay. And another one is our EMP services, and it has a test branch for all the tests. So I think this class and the previous class with Mockito is very important. It's very real in the industry. So you know in the testing in the tools what industry is using for the testing, for the tools like Swagger, like Pact test, those things. Okay, and I think that's all for Spring Framework and the Spring Training. And there are lots of work to do to get familiar with those things. And from next class, I will start the class for the AWS. So hopefully everybody already have an AWS account for yourself. Okay. Thank you.